Louise Upston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's on a sad day today that I rise to speak in this debate, and it's sad for a couple of reasons. The first being, of course, is Maurice Williamson, who has to date given 27 years of service to the constituents in Pakuranga, who has made a mistake, very clearly made a mistake, very quickly saw the error of his ways and paid the price for it. A very high price, Mr Speaker, and I'm proud that as a member of his caucus and one of his parliamentary colleagues, that he took swift action in acknowledging that. But, Mr Speaker, what actually makes me more sad is what then happens in this House when a parliamentary colleague makes a mistake, says so, cops it on the chin, resigns from being a minister, but then, Mr Speaker, what do we descend into in this House? Led by the opposition parties, we then descend into the gutter. And I actually want to reflect on comments that I will attribute to my colleague Chris Tremaine, who basically said, as a team, if you are unable to score points of your own success, what do you resort to? You resort to all sorts of tactics where you play the person and not the ball. And that's why, Mr Speaker, it's a sad day for me in the House today, because I don't think that it is ever a good day for the New Zealand public to see this kind of display when it is playing the person instead of playing the ball. And it was actually, I'm quite surprised actually that it was led by the Greens. I mean, you know, from a political perspective, obviously they got in before Labor did. Labor was too busy sort of trying to work out its reshuffle and its realignment of players on their team, with Shane Jones moving on to a better team. And then, of course, you know, Trevor moves up to a better position and goes back, you know, literally within hours. But Mr Speaker, I think the most appalling comments that came through today was the absolutely revolting and despicable comment from the Speaker of the Greens Party, suggesting that anyone in this Parliament would not do our utmost to protect the most vulnerable in our communities. And that, Mr Speaker, I think is an absolute disgrace. And that, more than anything, has saddened me today. And I think, you know, it's upsetting, because instead this place descends into very personal attacks. I mean, I could stand here and I could list, you know, other ministers and other governments that have made mistakes, you know, wittingly or unwittingly, and what's happened to them. But actually the New Zealand public aren't interested in that. What they are interested in is the fact that we had a minister, he made a mistake, he copped it on the chin, he's gone as a minister. And we have a Prime Minister who has very high standards for his ministers, and I think Nick Smith said 36 hours and it was dealt to. But actually, you know, coming back to this whole point of the fact that the opposition aren't able to score points. They can't score points in the real game, and the real game is actually focusing on the things that matter to hard-working New Zealanders, the things like we are doing with the budget next week, the things that we are doing in terms of improving access to healthcare for hard-working New Zealanders, for raising achievement in our schools. But, Mr Speaker, the most significant area in this debate today is in keeping our community safer, because the very minister that they are gloating about today is the minister that got $26 million worth of pee off the streets in New Zealand. And I think that's the sort of thing that New Zealanders judge their government on, is the results. And this side of the House, this government is delivering results. And, Mr Speaker, I won't take much more time, but I do want to finish on the results that also matter to hard-working New Zealanders, and that is in the area of the work that this side of the House has done in protecting very vulnerable victims. Because it's this side of the House that put police safety orders in place that immediately protect women and children who are under threat from domestic violence. So it's absolutely abhorrent to me to hear the sorts of comments that came from the Greens this afternoon in this House, because I am enormously proud of the results this side of the House has done in terms of lowering crime, the lowest rates in 30 years, and in particular the work that we have done protecting victims. Victims notification, victims protection, the Victims Offenders Levy. We've put money into sexual violence. We have done more than any government previously has done in the space of domestic violence. So, Mr Speaker, it is a sad day in this House, but sad for the reasons that we descend into the gutter with the opposition speakers on a day like today, instead of actually acknowledging the results and focusing on the results that this government has achieved and will continue to achieve.
This debate has now lapsed. Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I move that urgency be accorded the introduction and passing of the Psychoactive Substances Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, the Government's determined that after careful consideration that this bill be progressed through all stages under urgency